our goal here, first I'm going to tell you our goal, then I'm going to start with a little story, and then I'm going to introduce you. Actually, Sieva, let's introduce you first. Let's just tell people who you are, why they should trust you. And then after I kind of open us up here, you can kind of tell us your introduction story to delegating, which is pretty awesome.
Sure. Hey, y'all, my name is Sieva Kozinsky. I've been hiring people for a very long time. I've been either an entrepreneur or an investor going on 15 plus years. So I've started 5 companies. I've sold 2 of those companies. 2 of those companies failed. So I've also gotten kicked in the chin a bunch of times. And arguably, I learned a lot more from the ones that failed than the ones that succeeded. And I'm happy to share those lessons with you. I've also invested in 60 plus companies as a venture capitalist. And now I'm the founder and owner of a business called Enduring Ventures, where we own 15 businesses. They do a combined 200 million of revenue a year, and we have hundreds, 300 to 400 employees at any given time. So I've hired a lot of people. I've unfortunately fired some people, and I'm happy to share some of those lessons today.
And you're also a good friend of mine. You and I have gotten to know each other over the last probably 3 years, and it's been a pretty awesome relationship. So I want to start this with kind of our goal. Our goal is to send you away with what I call gold nuggets, meaning it's something that you can take away and actually apply it to your business. Whether it's a tactic, a strategy, we're going to get pretty gritty about how to find people, how to hire people, how to tell them what to do. And if you get what I call a gold nugget, I want you to drop it in the Q&A just so that we can note it. Maybe I can repeat it, and maybe we can kind of just be aware of what kind of value people are getting. I want to start with a story, and it kind of kicks off in 2012. I was 1 year out of college, and I was 2 years into a student pickup and delivery storage business. And I was sitting at a bar in Ithaca, New York. It's called Loco's Pub, still around. I was with my business partner, and I was a complainer. I was a victim. Like there's no other way to say it. I was complaining nonstop about how our employees didn't care. The labor market was brutal for hiring employees. Um, our employees weren't very smart. They kept making mistakes. They were costing us money. And I pointed fingers at everybody. That didn't work for me. What worked for me was taking ownership over my situation. And my partner, we kind of looked at each other and we were both complaining. We were both playing victim. And he looked at me and he goes, "Nick, this is not getting us anywhere. This is our business. There are many people who succeed at this business. There are many people who are profitable. It's on us. Like we are the ones who are setting this stuff up. How can we take ownership over our hiring?" And that was the revelation that kind of put me down the path of anything bad that happens in my business because of my people, it's my fault. And that has served me really well. My people are an extension of me. If they mess stuff up, it's on me. I'm not going to point fingers. I'm the one who's responsible for that. That mindset shift in 2012 was huge for me as a person. Now, I want to ask everybody a question, but Sieva, you're going to have to do it because you're the only person I can see here face to face. What would you say is the hardest business in the world? I mean, most likely to fail, hardest to manage, maybe a business that you would in no way, shape, or form want to find yourself in.
It's funny that you asked me because I ping pong on this question a little bit. I
There's a
have a
lot of bad
family
businesses
friend.
out there.
Yeah, that's true. I have a family friend named Calvin, and he works in the food business. He's worked in every part of the food business before. And about once a year or so, I get this idea that I want to start a restaurant, like a pizza place or a burger chain or something like that. And my mom always tells me when I tell her, I call her, I say, "Hey, I really want to start a pizza place. I have this great idea. Our neighborhood needs one." And she says, "You know what? You should call Calvin and just ask him what he thinks about that." And every time I call Calvin, he says, "Don't ever start a restaurant business. It's a horrible, horrible business." And I hang up the phone and I give up on that idea and I kind of move on. So I think that's probably my current choice.
Everybody answers the same thing. It's restaurants. It's definitely the highest rates of failure, 80% plus. It's definitely the one where the owner is tied to the kitchen. The owner can't go on vacation. The owner spends every Friday and Saturday night until 2 a.m. at the restaurant. But here's an example. I don't know if you've ever been to a Texas Roadhouse. I love Texas Roadhouse. And if you're an entrepreneur, one takeaway here is that I want you to put Texas Roadhouse on your destination list for a date night with your spouse over the next month because it is phenomenally well operated. The one in Athens, they seat 150 people at a time. They have over 40 employees on the floor at any given time, and it is packed from 4:30 to 9 p.m. every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. You can barely get a seat. They have 82,000 employees. They have 630 locations. They do 4 billion in annual revenue. Texas Roadhouse, a restaurant chain, $6.3 million per store, 1.1 million in profit per store, 693 million in profit company wide. 693 million in annual profit. They're worth 6.5 billion. This was maybe 6 or 8 months ago that I put this slide together for a presentation that I gave. But this is the hardest business in the world. And here is a business, an operator, an operation team, a management team that runs this business extremely well and runs it flawlessly. So I want you to name your excuse. If you're watching this, if you're one of these business owners that sits around, and I have tons of business owner friends, and I do it too all the time, even though I told myself in 2012 that I wouldn't, that I'm going to stop complaining about how hard it is and stop making excuses. But what is your excuse? Why can't you manage people well enough to do what Texas Roadhouse has done? And this is the saying that I have taped to my mirror in my bedroom. When I wake up and go to the bathroom and I'm brushing my teeth, this saying right here is taped to my mirror. If I'm a good enough manager of people and I can delegate and I can hire and I can lead people, the world is my oyster. Everything is my fault. So that's how I wanted to kick it off. But and basically just try to give you an eye-opening example that even the hardest businesses in the world, there's people that succeed at them. And it's because they can lead and they can hire and they can delegate.
I think I want to talk a little bit about probably my early days of hiring. Because that's where I got the like most brutal learnings of hiring and delegation. I went from thinking I'm going to be a doctor, I'm just going to go to medical school, I'm going to work for a hospital, I don't need to think about hiring and delegation, to I learned about startups. I took a startup class in college. All of a sudden, I thought to myself, wow, like there's this world where I can start a business, I can pursue my dreams, I can hire people. And I immediately forgot about being a doctor. I gave up on that dream and that career. And I decided that I'm going to start companies. And the first company that I started was a little education business called Study Soup. Basically, it was a very simple idea. So I was a bad note taker in college. So what I would do is I would either hire my friends or I would pay them for their class notes that they were taking. Some people are just really, really good note takers. And that idea kind of grew to be what Study Soup was. Basically, like we were going to go to students, take their class notes, put it on our website, and have them sell it to their classmates. So if you weren't going to class or you weren't a great note taker, you can buy those notes. And it worked. It worked really, really well. You guys just saw a picture of me with my old business partner. This is 12 plus years ago, back in my college days. So this is my business partner. We met in college when I was a sophomore. We started tinkering on projects together. And I guess first and foremost, I probably should have bought more Apple stock at that age. They've done really, really well since then. But the big lesson that I picked up was how to hire and how to delegate through this. So we started at one college campus, which was just my school, and we wanted the business to be bigger. So we grew. We went from one campus to 5 campuses to 50 campuses. And at its peak, I had over 100 different college campuses where we were hiring students to be class note takers.
Man, you came up in the same brutal environment with the same workforce that I did.
I laugh a lot about this. There's the young entrepreneurs who start in college, like we all kind of do college-oriented business, and they are
Higher
just
college
brutal
kids.
to run.
Yeah.
So we had 2 to 5 interns per campus, which means across 100 campuses, we had 200 to 500 interns at any given time that were looking for note takers that were promoting our service. So we needed managers, we needed people to manage these interns. And if you flip to the next slide, you'll see some of the pain that I was feeling. So, we're growing really fast. Things are going really well.
All right, you
And
look
I'm
different in that
hiring.
photo.
What's that?
I said you look different in that photo. I'll give you
Yeah.
that.
So I'll talk about that photo in a second. So we started hiring college students, like really smart, capable college students, and we're paying them well, right? We're at the time, we're paying them $15 an hour. I think minimum wage at the time was like 9.
This is like
Uh,
2013, 12.
yeah,
Yep.
exactly. 2012, 2013. And the issue that I'm facing is that a lot of these really smart college students, they're skipping meetings, they're showing up late, and half of my employees are quitting after a few months. It's too much work. They want to pursue a different career. And it's just this constant problem that we're dealing with. And then one of my mentors, hears me complaining all the time about this problem. And he says, look, I had a similar problem in my past business. So I hired all of my managers in the Philippines for $3 an hour. And as you can imagine, my head kind of exploded.
I wish I would have had a mentor tell me that in 2013. I didn't learn that until 2020.
I mean, I was so lucky because this business just would have not worked without that little insight. And he kind of mentioned it in passing. He's like, "Have you ever thought about this?" And it was like, I'm in California. Like the Philippines is so far away. And candidly, I'd never even I didn't know where it was on the map at the time, right? So I fly to the Philippines. I realize, okay, like the math on this business isn't going to work. People are quitting too much. It's way too expensive. So I have to go hire people in the Philippines. So I fly to the Philippines. I hire 5 people, which are my test, kind of like my early test bed of employees. And it works incredibly well. Everyone there is super grateful to be working for my team. They show up on time. I'm paying them, $3 to $4 an hour at that time. And now that I have the benefit of hindsight, it's 12 years later, many of those employees that I hired back in the day are now managers and leaders at my companies. So it's really kind of a game-changing situation for my business, as you can imagine. All of a sudden, like we're generating real profit. We have great employees, covering customer service, marketing, operation, finance, accounting, like every main bucket of hiring that we had at our company, we were prioritizing to hire up there. And that's really where, and that picture actually that you guys saw earlier was me taking a cooking class in Thailand after I'd done my first Philippines visit. Um, so yeah, I guess Nick, back to you. I'm curious, what have you kind of learned over the years as a delegator? Like what are some of the
Yeah.
limitations that you see kind of owners run into?
So the hard thing about delegating is that there is no class and there is no practice that the average person gets at delegating. I ran Division 1 track and field at a high level. There was never a point where I showed up for practice and the coach said, "Hey, Nick, we're going to do 4 circuits today and 5 600s. Why don't you find a freshman to go out and do that work for you?" Never showed up to a class where the teacher said, "Hey, why don't you have somebody else read your book for you and study for this test?" It's just not natural for us to lead other human beings. So nobody ever gets any practice. And unfortunately, delegation and hiring is a muscle. Like you can watch these webinars, you can try to learn from people like me, you can read books on it, you can watch YouTube videos, you can listen to podcasts, you can study it. But until you go to the gym and you pick up the damn weight, you're not going to build the muscle. So I again learned through the school of hard knocks of messing up and not leading people well enough and delegating too fast and um, micromanaging and all the different mistakes that we make. So I want to talk first about like a really bad piece of advice that I got early on in my career. And that is it's all over social media, it's all over the business books. The key to business success is hiring great people. You have this rich person, they sit down in an interview and they're going to talk about why they're rich and why they're successful. And really they're just trying to be humble. Like I get it. And you hear them say the same thing. The key to success is hiring great people. I've been lucky enough to hire amazing people throughout my careers. That's actually not what I found. So I found myself looking for great people to run lawnmowers. I found myself looking for great people to drive box trucks. I found myself looking for spectacular people. And it turned out it wasn't approachable at all to me. And I was looking for unicorns. I was looking for people that didn't exist. And I found out that the key to build a great business is you have 2 options. You can find world-class people to join your business. I didn't have that option. Most people listening to this don't have that option. Or you can build a company where normal people can thrive. So like the biggest, best piece of advice I ever got was, Nick, simplify this stuff and make it so that a normal person can come into your company and add value. If you can do that, you'll win. But if you're running around looking for unicorns and you're looking for amazing talent and you're doing top grading and you're doing all this stuff that you hear about in the media of finding spectacular people, it's really, 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 really hard. So simplifying the job and making it so that normal people can thrive is just a huge takeaway for me because that's really
Yeah,
interesting.
I want to just add a couple things to that because I think that's an incredible insight, and it's not one that I learned until a few years ago, really. Um, at the time I was an owner of an HVAC business. The HVAC business was doing really well, but I was constantly stressed, and the things that were bringing me stress were concerned, like mostly employee concerns. One of the big ones was we had this amazing manager, and I was very conscious of the problem that if for some reason the manager decided to quit or leave, or God forbid they were hit by a bus, that business would immediately struggle. There was nobody in that business that could come and help replace what the manager was doing. And there was a series of these situations where I was very stressed about the riskiness of the business. It was a great business overall. It was generating good cash flow, but it was causing me a lot of pain. And a few years back, we actually sold it to a private equity firm, a very large, very successful, well-known private equity firm. They were the best in the industry at this particular in this particular specialty. And it was really interesting for me because I got a lens into how the pros do it, right? At the time I'd been only doing this for a couple of years, so I was a novice in buying and growing businesses. But this private equity firm, they'd been doing this for 20 years, and they had a full team dedicated towards this. They had a full process dedicated towards this. And what I learned, kind of my two main takeaways from watching how they do business was twofold, and it's really relevant to what you just shared, Nick. One was that they invested a ton in their education for employees. They learned that it's very hard to hire a great employee who knows everything, but you can hire a smart, capable person that you can train on all of the skills that you need to run a very, very successful business. So they had a very well developed education program, actually. The second piece that they taught me is this idea of redundancy. And it's not really one that I'd considered in the past. Basically, they cross-trained all of their employees. So there was never a single employee that only knew one very important job. Every employee had their own focus, had their own area of learning, but they also would overlap 20 or 30% with somebody else's role. So that if that person needed extra help because they were busy, or maybe they didn't show up for work,
Or they
somebody
got
was there.
sick, or they quit, or it's the
All the
airplane.
different things that can happen to you.
It's the airplane model, right? An
Yeah,
airplane is disastrous if it stops working. You cannot afford to have your airplane stop working. So there's a ton of redundancy across all systems.
exactly.
Take that to business. And that's what they did.
Exactly. You want your business to be battle proof, right? And if you're in there flying your business every day and a single hit or a single change can really meaningfully hurt your business or take down your business, that's not a great place to be in business.
Yeah.
And the last piece that they taught me was to hire more than I thought I needed, right? I obviously wanted to run the most efficient business possible with the most profit possible, which meant that my staff was leaner than it should be. The minute this group had come in and bought that HVAC company, they immediately hired 15 to 20% more staff than we already had. And the reason was, again, redundancy. It was more important for them to be long-term viable and to be to protect themselves from risks than it was to be short-term profitable. And
And they
I'll
also
talk
probably
about that.
found a way to raise their prices so that their profit actually didn't drop, and they knew how to pull growth metrics so they could kind of hire ahead of that growth. So it was less risky for them to put that extra payroll on. They got redundancy, they got prepared for more growth, and they raised their prices probably so that they could not take that big of a hit in the near term.
That's exactly right. And I think that greed. I think the two main limiting factors for owners who are thinking of hiring are fear and greed. These are the ones that really prevent people from moving forward with their business. Greed is the one we're just talking about, right? Is I don't want to hire an extra person because it's going to cut into my personal profits and I'm going to have to change my lifestyle. That is a very, very common
Scarcity
mindset of
mindset.
owners.
Scarcity
Scarcity
mindset.
mindset.
There's only so much
Exactly.
money out there. If I pay somebody $20 an hour, that's $20 an hour out of my pocket.
Exactly.
Instead of that
Exactly.
person being an asset and coming in and making the company $40 an hour.
And there's sometimes going to be a short-term bump of you're going to have to take less profits, but it is always long-term beneficial if you get the right people in the right seats, right?
Yep.
And I've done this so much. I've underhired operationally, I've underhired on the sales side. And if you're an outside person looking in and you think to yourself, wow, Sieva really doesn't have enough operations people, or he doesn't have enough sales people in his company, you would immediately say, hey, you need to hire more operations people. You need to hire more salespeople. Yes, it will be short-term painful, but in the next 6 months, you're going to have a much stronger, less risky, and a much more profitable business. So pulling back on your greed is something that's really important. And fear is similar, right? Is like, I'm scared of delegating my role because I'm the only one that can do it. And I have believed that at one point in my life. I no longer believe that. I am at the opposite side of the fear spectrum. I believe there are people way better than me at
Better.
every single role, and I delegate as much as I can and everything to those people.
Craig said his gold nugget was make everything simple, and I want to elaborate on that a little bit. You can see the slide. In 2013, so this is a year after I had that victim mentality and I fixed that, my employees were still messing up a lot. They were literally Ivy League undergrads. We were hiring Cornell undergrads, Princeton undergrads, Penn undergrads. We were hiring Big Ten kids. These were kids who were going to go succeed in their career, and they could not succeed inside of my company. And it's because I was asking them to be good at about 35 things. The kids needed to drive the box truck. They needed to make the invoice. They were making the schedule. They were pricing all the items. They were making sure all the items were labeled. They were loading the box truck. They were driving the box truck back to the warehouse. They were unloading the box truck in the warehouse, organizing it all. And we had a tablet that they used to like a LTE tablet in 2013 that they used to make the schedule with Google Sheets, or they were like staying on schedule. On the back of it was a 35-part checklist of all the things they needed to remember to do every time they serviced a customer. 2014, we cut that down and said, hey, our employees need to be good at 5 things: drive the truck, label everything, organize everything in the truck, answer basic customer service, and stay on schedule. Like, that's it. We're going to have them take a photo of the order, and somebody else on a computer is going to make the invoices. We're going to have them hand a card out so that instead of answering intricate customer service emails, somebody on the phone, not there on site, could answer customer service emails. They're not going to be making any of the schedules. They're actually going to get a new empty truck brought to them so that they don't have to go back to the warehouse to do a totally different job and unload the truck. So we kind of separated out their job and simplified it. Now, you can't do this at the very beginning when you only have one employee. Sometimes they need to be jack of all trades. But as we grew, we were operating in 12 states and at 25 colleges, and we had 70 kids driving trucks and another 70 with them as crew leaders. And then we had 6 invoicers and a bunch of customer service reps, and we could really simplify each job. And when we simplified the job, miraculously, they got way better at their job. So that was a huge takeaway for me. Stop asking your employees to be good at 35 things. If you ask your employees to be good at 5 things, they'll do them all well. So we pulled as much off their plate with technology as we possibly could. And 2014 was double the profit and half the stress of 2013.
Nick, I gotta say, as you're talking through this business, the pure logistics and pain of managing college students is just making me sweat. I can like feel it, I'm like, no,
I
don't do
uh
that.
it was a struggle, man. It was. I learned a ton about people and management. So I was in a very hard business, and I learned delegation, and I learned hiring, and I learned management. And when you apply those things to better businesses, life gets a little bit better and more
Amen.
profitable. All right, so
Uh,
I want to hear your why, Sieva, because we talk a lot about how to do all this, but not very many people talk about the why.
yes, the why, the why, the why, the why is just the most important question to ask, right? And I think it's the most important question to answer because most people's why is I just want to make more money, right? Or like I need a little bit of less stress in my life. My why, and I encourage everyone to live their kind of biggest why in their life, right? Like fulfill your biggest dream. And for me, delegation and hiring people gets me to my biggest why, right? I want to live a good life, right? I want to be a good son. I want to be a good husband. I want to be a good dad. I want to be healthy, right? I want to have good health. I want to be healthy mentally. I want to work out. I love fun. This is something Nick and I share quite a bit, right? We both
We're
like to work. We
hobbyists.
both
We're
like to make
hobbyists for
money,
sure.
but we want to have fun, right? Like we like to go camping. We like to go hiking. We like to go sailing. I want to be with friends. I want to build community. And I want to live a wealthy life, right? I want to make money and I want to support my family members and those around me. Now, when I read biographies of people like Warren Buffett, for example, obviously I've learned so much from him about being a businessman. But one thing that I'm not jealous of him is his experience with his family and his community, right? He forgoed those elements in order to just be the world's best investor, and that's not how I want to spend my life. And I've made a conscious choice around that, and therefore I hire and I place people in my life in order to facilitate this full picture, right? These are all things that are really important to me. And if you flip to the next side, you can see like a few pictures of like things that I like to do while I'm also managing a multi-$100 million business, right? We've gone hiking to Yosemite with my partner, we've gone sailing, we've gone skiing with friends, and those would just not be possible unless I had a good infrastructure and a good team around me, because I don't have to do every single important job.
Yeah, my fear doing all this, I talk a lot about small business and the benefits of entrepreneurship. My fear is that people end up 10 years into a business where they are the bottleneck. They are working 80 hours a week. They don't have a business, they have a job. And it's a nightmare scenario. So this
We
stuff
buy
is
a lot
super
of
important.
businesses actually from owners that are in this situation,
And you
right?
can build wealth. Like they're probably pretty well off, right? You can build a business where every decision flows through you. Like I say, there's two types of delegation. There's task delegation, meaning I'm just going to tell somebody what to do. The level up from that and the harder part is decision making delegation. I'm going to actually delegate decisions and empower my employees to make decisions. That is very hard. And the first phase can get you pretty darn wealthy, where every decision flows right through you. You're the bottleneck of your business. You can't go on vacation. If you step away from your phone, things stop happening. Nobody can sell jobs. Nobody knows what to price things at. But you can have 8, 10 employees and you can make millions of dollars doing that, because entrepreneurship is powerful and delegating a lot of tasks can work. But if you can reach that second level of delegation, teaching your people to make decisions, I think it gets really powerful. And one way that I like to kind of visualize this, I hope this is a nugget for some people, is the monkey on the back. I talk about this a lot. Like an employee comes to you with a problem. And this is just a tactical piece of advice on how to manage and how to deal with little problems. An employee comes to you with a problem. Most business owners say, okay, I'll solve it. Get out of my way. Like, give me your problem. Imagine they walk in an office and they have a monkey on their back. That's the problem. And they say, Nick, I got a big ass problem. And they tell you the problem. And as soon as they tell it to you, that monkey jumps from their back to your desk and it's now on your desk. Most business owners, they say, okay, leave. I'll take care of it. At the end of the day, they end up with an office full of monkeys and they're dealing with problems all day long. And they have a bunch of employees that are trained that, oh my gosh, every time I have a problem, I'm going to go see Nick and I'm going to drop my monkey off on his desk and I'm going to go about my business. That happens a ton. The harder in the moment, but the better long-term solution is to make sure that employee walks out of your office with their monkey. How do you do that? Well, you ask them leading questions. You ask them how they think about things. You ask them what they would do, and you coach them through how to think for themselves. And two things happen. Your employees get better because they get practice making decisions. And number two, you get a look into the mind of the employee to figure out who's got it and who hasn't, and who's, you know, capable of making more decisions and starting and continuing to grow within the organization. So when an employee calls you with a problem, you have two options: get out of my way, I'll solve it, or hey, I'm not going to solve it. An example of this is one of my employees calls, hey, Nick, I'm trying to rent a storage. I have a customer on the line. I'm trying to rent a storage unit to them. I rented them unit 76. They got there. Unit 76 is locked. I don't know what to do. Like, okay, boom. The problem's now on my desk. What's Nick going to do with the fact that a customer's standing outside of Unit 76 and they can't rent it? I say, okay, hey, Sieva, what's our goal here? What's our goal? You're going to say, to rent more storage units. Like, we want to get this person in a unit. Like, okay, with that information, what do you think is a realistic solution? Some employees melt and say, oh, I don't know. I have no idea what to do. Just tell me. And some of them will think like, well, I'm looking at the site map here and we have unit 73 wide open. It's the same size. Maybe I'll just tell them to go into that one. Boom, get out of my office. Here's your monkey. Done. So, little things like that to harder things. Like
That's a magical moment when
it
it
takes more
happens.
work to train that employee on how to do these things, but it pays off in the long run.
Well, Daniel Erb has a good question here. And I think, if you stick around till the end, I have 5 slides that are highly tactical about how to delegate and how to work with people, especially when they're outside of your office. I've been doing this for 12 years. The first couple of years were brutal, right? Because I was only used to working with people who were inside of my office. But over the years, we've picked up a lot of tactics and strategies, and frankly, the technology has just gotten way better, such that you can make it feel like people are in your office and they're highly accountable too. So we'll definitely get to that at the end, and I've got a list of tools you can use too. And if we'll make sure to send around that list if we don't have time to go into it in detail today.
Daniel also asked, like, what's it like hiring offshore contractors and working with somewhere.com? And I'm not going to spend this webinar selling somewhere. You know that I own part of somewhere.com. It's a recruiting agency that finds overseas talent. But I do want to show you, and I want to open your mind to the type of talent that you can find overseas.
So I went to college in Colombia and I got a degree in civil engineering. I believe US folks should hire more people in Latin America because there's an untapped market. We come from good families, families that run businesses. We've been there, we know the experiences. We've seen it in our fathers and our uncles and our grandparents, And we're coming into the American workforce, ready to apply all this because there's just better opportunity in America. We're hardworking, and we have the skill sets equal or above anyone else in the planet right now. So 3 years ago, I started as an assistant, and now I run 3 teams with up to 10 people. It might sound crazy, but in the interview, I told my boss that in 5 years' time, I was gonna run one of his companies.
I live in Colombia and I studied engineering in college, yeah. I would say my top skills are organization and diligence in delivering tasks in an efficient way. So basically communication, I think it's also something that I'm good at. Talking to different people, I feel comfortable with. So the fact that I can speak Spanish has helped me unexpectedly to communicate with some contractors, and I've worked for an American company for almost 3 years now. I deal with dynamic problems. We have to execute projects, execute tasks, and we need to make decisions like right now, and this is something that we're good at and that we do.
So unfortunately, there was technical difficulties and the webinar ends now, at least the recording that we have. But I want to let you know that there's a special offer that I can extend to you for watching all this. If you want to make a hire with somewhere.com, I can give you $1,000 off our recruiting fee, and we can help you find one of those killers like the videos you just saw. Send me an email, nick@sweatystartup.com, and I'll make a special intro to the team, and you can get a discount. Pretty big discount towards finding some awesome talent overseas. Again, email me, nick@sweatystartup.com, and I'll make an intro to the team, and you can get $1,000 off your next hire with somewhere.com. Thanks for watching the webinar, and we'll catch you next time.